we started to see a pickup in this like really jarring and traumatic kind of content being shared, right? Really jarring content. And so then in September of 2023, the FBI released a press release for the first time about 764 and their related groups. They go by lots of names: 764, Harm Nation, Leak Society, and then there's like all of these numbers, 6996, and various splinter factions. And the FBI started warning about these satanic accelerationist networks that were abusing and extorting kids. And that's when there was an article that came out that linked it to Order of Nine Angles, the same satanic cult. So this was our first like aha moment. We're like, oh, okay. What we're seeing is like honestly kind of a transformation of the landscape into something really, really evil. Like beyond most people's ability to comprehend evil. Like the worst things that you can imagine are going on here.
What does that even mean? What's beyond evil?
Trying to convince kids to commit suicide on camera. I mean, trying to convince them to go on mass shootings and kill their classmates. Just like, it's kind of like, I feel like a lot of people focus on for example, a mass shooting, right? They're focusing on that mass shooter's the most evil thing. Like, that's the face of evil. It's the most evil person imaginable. And like, maybe, but like, I honestly think the person who's behind them trying to manipulate them into doing it is more evil than most people can comprehend. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, who's more evil, the person who's manipulating this proxy soldier or the soldier themselves, and so, it's really, anyway, so that's when we stumbled upon Kyle Spitz, who was in a viral video where his stepdad's like drunk and like shoots his ear and he's like, and like runs out the house. And a lot of people saw this video. It went viral. Well, we found out that Kyle Spitz was actually a member of 764 Network because his victims were screaming about it nobody was listening to them. They were just kind of screaming online about it. And so we started to look into that, and that's where we started to, map out the 764 pedophile networks and kind of see the extent of this thing. And Kyle Spitz was the first high-profile arrest recently. When I started reporting on it, I didn't honestly want to be the face of that because I thought it was too big and I thought I would sound crazy. And I tried to give that story to other outlets and other influencers who I thought would have more pull, but none of them were really interested. So for better or worse, I decided to take the story myself and start talking about it. And then I kind of just accidentally became the face of reporting on this massive child exploitation extortion network that's also definitely tied into some mass shootings, and even some really recent stabbing attacks have been associated and linked to this group. So it got a lot bigger than I was prepared for it to as a normie. I'm kind of a nobody. Like, I'm not like a seasoned journalist or like a big influencer. I don't have a huge audience. I'm just a mom who's like went online one day and started looking behind curtains and finding all this evil stuff and talking about it. And so sometimes it kind of feels like I'm in like a big room just screaming to nobody, and then trying to get people to listen, and then people will occasionally walk by and sometimes they'll listen and sometimes just be like, that person's crazy. So I guess it's been kind of hard being the public face of this. Definitely not something I saw myself doing this year.
I mean, you are definitely brave and courageous because I can't even imagine, because you've seen a lot of it. You understand a lot of it. You've communicated with some of it, and you've heard the stories of victims, of provocateurs. It's a lot to deal with. You say the word satanic a lot. Satanic cults. What is the role of Satanism in these organizations, and is there a push or is there any sort of responsibility to maybe even the Satanic Church?
The Church of Satan official Twitter page came after me when I started talking about this stuff, which was
Really?
also weird. I didn't have that on my bingo card.
No.
I was like, this is actually the Church of Satan official Twitter page, like quote tweeting me.
Yeah.
Like, don't associate these people with Satanists. I'm like, they call themselves Satanists and they worship Satan. And they say that they're doing all of this as a ritualist, it's a ritual for them, initiation rites. And they're like, painting satanic imagery in blood and summoning demons and stuff. Okay, like they're Satanists. That's what they are. I'm sorry that that's inconvenient to the more progressive and modest Satanists, which Church of Satan is and always has been an attempt to kind of, almost like destigmatize Satanism in the eyes of the public. They're very politically correct and mild.
I did not see that coming, by the way. I did not see the political correctness of Satanism being a thing.
They're very politically correct. And so when you try to associate these guys who are terrorists, I mean, they're pedophiles, they're terrorists, they don't want to be associated with that. In fact, as I've been doing this work, so you've got the 764 network, which is just the worst thing you can imagine. I'm telling you, it's traumatic stuff to even research, right? And then you've got these, the Satanists, this neo-Nazi Order of Nine Angles group and stuff. And some of those guys are definitely overlapping with the 764 network. But some of them aren't. And some of them don't even want to be like linked to that at all. Like even the terrorists, some of them don't want anything to do with 764. It's too much.
So there is a moral hierarchy amongst the most evil people in the world.
There really is.
That's crazy,
maybe
too.
even just publicly, they don't want to be associated with child abuse. And it's kind of a funny backstory, but, going back to Order of Nine Angles, this cult was started in the 70s and 80s, allegedly by a guy named David Myatt, who's a National Socialist in the UK, who actually was affiliated with Column 88 and a bunch of other neo-Nazi movements in the UK at that time. And so there's a book called Global Death Cult about this by William Ramsey. It's really good. You should check it out. And the theory that he lays out kind of says that David Myatt was a National Socialist who would realize that political action wasn't getting the results he wanted, and he felt like his cause was hopeless. And so what he did was he started a satanic cult and indoctrinated people with this Lovecraftian type of apocalyptic death cult ideology to believe that they were like foot soldiers, and their goal was to infiltrate organizations and kind of try to push them towards National Socialist causes. It was an infiltration attempt, like a entryism kind of thing. And but at the same time, it felt like David Myatt was trying to indoctrinate people into this cult belief system that he thought would lead them to go and, promote National Socialism for the benefit of him and his causes, but under the guise of this cult, kind of. So I feel like David Myatt never even really believed in the satanic stuff that he created because, again, the cult ideology itself is not necessarily rooted in traditional Satanism at all. It's like they believe that they're creating a super imperium of Aryan, basically super soldiers who during the next eonic shift of the world, it'll be in chaos and they'll step in and rule with their galactic super imperium that'll eventually take them to other galaxies and they'll like rule other galaxies. I mean, so it's very, it's like an 80s cult, right? Like, so that's kind of how it started. You can see that it was very, like their ideology is a sign of the times for UFO cults and stuff too. But it's also like, I guess, Aryan supremacy geared, which is weird. So now you have this kind of cult that was really geared towards doing bad things and evil things and sinister left-hand path rituals and stuff, right? It's very complex. But over time, it became more and more and more and more and more evil. And so now that the child abuse stuff started to get involved, David Myatt himself kind of retracted everything and almost tried to back out of it and say, never mind, I changed my mind. I don't want anything to do with what I created and what it became. And he tried to put out a lot of stuff condemning child abuse and condemning terrorism. But to me, it just seems like he's full of regret for what he started and doesn't want to be associated with it anymore because it became too evil for this apocalyptic death cult leader. And so now, I think that the cult that he started has completely spun out of control. For one thing, it merged with modern accelerationist movements. Like there was one called Atomwaffen Division, which was an accelerationist terrorist group. That one kind of merged with Order of Nine Angles ideology and became one of our first real satanic neo-Nazi terror groups in the U.S. that was, dangerous. And from there, that splintered off into a whole bunch of different communities and groups, and now it's just metastasized. It's like if you look at a cancer that started in your stomach, now it's spread through the lymph nodes, and it's just everywhere. So that's kind of the idea. That's how I see the modern landscape of terrorism. And now, if you go to some of these Telegram channels that are white supremacy, Aryan supremacy stuff, that would, maybe in the past, they would have been focused on, KKK type of stuff, right? But now you almost can't go to any of those channels without finding the satanic elements present in some way. So they've been very good at infiltrating these groups and spreading Satanism all throughout the landscape. So now we've got this, it's almost impossible to separate normal terrorism, I guess, from the satanic variety. It's just all combined and coalesced now.
Because it feels like we are in this global war of good versus evil. And what you're saying is that on the side of evil, the Satanists have infiltrated and are accelerating the acceleration of their movement. Is that a good...
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these people, and it makes sense psychologically, right? You put yourself in the position of a bored white kid online, bored, teenager online who's on 4chan and finds these, white supremacy networks or, whatever, neo-fascist networks. And they're edgy. They like edgy stuff. Ooh, Satanism, that's cool. Okay, I like that, So it's a very edgy subculture. Even the ones that aren't satanic worship mass shooters. They worship them like saints. They saw that in my part 4 video where they talks about the people who were arrested from the Terrorgram network who were basically, if you read that indictment, that's crazy how they were basically like, I found this kid online who's 18-year-old. He seems pretty impressionable. I'm going to go indoctrinate him. And then watching them go and just like hound this person with like, you're going to be a martyr, you're going to be a saint, you have to go kill black people or whatever, attack a mosque or whatever it may be. And so all of these kind of edgy murder evil based movements have one thing in common, and it's that they're evil and they want to hurt people. So it's not that surprising that Satanism would gain a foothold in there with people who are already very amoralistic.
But as they accelerate the accelerationism and they are able to achieve their goal, which is to create chaos and break down society, what is their goal there? Because what if there's no society? What if they're successful?
It doesn't make any sense. In this getting into the weeds, but I like it. This is a really interesting part of this theory, right? And I've had the pleasure of speaking to a lot of these people. I've spoken to Order of Nine Angles members. Really? I've spoken to people who were accelerationist neo-Nazis who got out of it. And, they're still kind of weird, but they're helping me out by kind of, giving me an inside look at what it looked like. And what's interesting is that none of them can really elucidate what happens after the collapse. So for Order of Nine Angles, the theory is that once society collapses, it's like almost an apocalyptica kind of thing where a new phase of evil will emerge and, chaos, post-apocalyptic chaos will reign. So they're a little bit different because they do have an idea. And it's based on this like fantasy that they will be like dark imperium fascist overlords or something. But for a lot of the other kind of accelerationist collapses, they seem to think that their cell will gain a fascist foothold over the U.S. When I say fascist, I mean like they want to take over the government and enforce, tyrannical craziness, not like, that's another word I'm using very specifically here. But also a lot of times they're like, well, our cell's going to come in and we're going to deport every person who's not 100% Aryan and we're going to put them in camps and then ship them off. And it's like, what's your plan for that? We don't have to have a plan. It's a collapse. We can do whatever we want. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like when you try to start,
they're not thinking logistics.
when you start poking them at like what happens next, and then sometimes you can even kind of see their humanity peek out at times. Because like I had one neo-Nazi who I was talking to, and I was like, so what do you do with the kids, right? Okay, what about the babies? What are you gonna do? You gonna just kill them? Well, no. We'll put them in camps and then we'll raise them as. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, dude. Just admit that you're gonna kill the kids,
Yeah.
But you can see their moral framework start to kick in and go, I don't know, So they're very confused.
Because everyone has a different moral line,
Yeah.
somewhere in that.
Mm-hmm. But I think that, and this is the bottom line, is that when you look at, for example, how David Myatt, I still don't believe that he believes this stuff. I don't believe that he believes that these dark demons will overtake the earth after the collapse and that they'll rule the planet or whatever and go to other galaxies. Like, I don't think that they believe that. I think that the masterminds, if you go all the way up to the top of the chain, I think that the people who are really masterminding this kind of stuff are foreign adversaries. They're people who want to see the U.S. collapse. Who wants to, ask yourself, who wants to see the U.S. burn? And there's your answer for who would probably be behind this kind of thing.
Because even if it's decentralized and loosely connected, you still need someone to fund it.
Not necessarily, because, they're doing this over the internet with just their webcams, right? So I've talked to, or not me personally, but I've seen conversations with some of these bigger foreign figures, like this guy. If you watch part 3 of my docuseries, we talk about a guy named Butcher from Eastern Europe who was trying to solicit a mass casualty attack on New York, where he was trying to get somebody to hand out rice and laced candy to racial minority children in New York, like sick stuff. And this guy, when he was asked, like, what's your purpose for getting into this 764 network and trying to recruit kids and do all of this? And he said, the goal is to spread evil and murder and to basically corrupt the youth. We want to corrupt the youth of America. And that stuck with me, because what better way to attack our country than to subvert and corrupt our youth? One thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough is this cycle of trauma. So even the victims of these networks are much more likely to become abusers themselves, right? Sometimes they're extorted into abusing other kids. Sometimes they just feel like they like it because they're getting validated, but they're also victims themselves. And so not only do we have victims, but we have abusers, and we have these dark forces basically just trying to hurt our kids and, instill them with evil and corruption. It's pretty sick.
I mean, in the Bible, they talk about the period of tribulation before the second coming of Jesus. And they call that 7 years. It's where Christians will be persecuted. It's where chaos will erupt in the world. Do you think on the same side, they're trying to get into that period faster? Because I think both sides agree that this period will exist. It's a matter of what happens afterwards. That's the divide, right? Between the light side and the dark side. But are they trying to get into this period of complete chaos faster? Do you think it is spiritually and
concept of accelerationism.
Religious motive?
Yep, absolutely. I do. I think that for some people it is a spiritual motive, especially these people who are really in dark, really do believe this Order of Nine Angles kind of ideology that after the collapse that evil will reign and they're going to be the leaders of this evil movement. So yeah, I mean, I do think it is, it really is spiritual warfare. Like, I don't say that lightly. We're dealing with people whose main goal is to corrupt and traumatize our kids. And there's a lot of benefits to that, but I think that ultimately the biggest advantage to that would just be to destabilize our country. It's a good way to destabilize our country, right?
But as people become aware of this, as the government starts getting involved, as DOJ starts getting involved, you would think that there's some sort of crackdown. You would hope that there is. On the flip side of that, we are getting into an age of AI, artificial intelligence. We will be in a place in maybe 5 years where online you can't tell the difference between human and artificial intelligence. Yeah. Meaning that these people are going to be able to take these ideas and amplify it by 1,000,000x.
Yep.
And the people that are pushing these ideas, you're never going to catch them because everyone's a bot. And you can't distinguish between human and artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Where does that lead? How do you stop this?
Well, I mean, I think that there's already a lot of AI bots out there that are maybe pushing kids into these places. That might be a little bit more of a conspiracy theory for now, but I do believe that those already exist. And I've been told by credible sources that they do exist already, bots that try to radicalize our kids. I think that and so this is where I talk about resilience, right? So yes, we could keep trying to cut the head off of this Hydra. And we should. We have to keep pressure on it, right? And we have to keep making an example out of these people who think they can groom our kids to commit terror acts. And they think they can get away with it because they're not the ones that are actually pulling the trigger. We need to keep making examples out of those people, for sure. However, I want to talk about resilience and community resilience and taking care of our kids and teaching our kids. And, if we can get more parents to listen and to be aware of the dangers that their kids face, and we can talk to our kids about it, just like we talk to our kids about stranger danger, right? We talk to our kids at age-appropriate levels about what people can do online, grooming them and stuff. And and if parents are more aware of this happening, they can watch for the signs. We can protect our kids. That's really our best line of defense, is protecting our kids and teaching them to have good values and teaching them how to avoid these online harms. To me, that's what's being overlooked, because at the DOJ, FBI level, they're already all over this. Like, they're already making arrests. I think there's been over 30 arrests already related to this network. So they're doing it. They're doing their job, but their job isn't to teach you how to protect your kids. And I think that our government maybe should even consider putting out PSAs. I mean, how much would that really cost? Like, how many resources would that really take to warn people about, these harms and talk about them? And I think what's especially been difficult for me, like the hardest part of all of this, is seeing all of this stuff and having people think I'm crazy because I think that in a lot of ways they could even see the proof of it and still bury their head in the sand because it's horrible. They don't want to believe it. They'd rather just pretend that didn't exist or pretend that would never happen to them or their family. But, it could happen. And so I've never really been the right face for this, like I'm not, I don't know if I've really been effective or whatever. But I've really just been continuing to be loud and try to get people's attention and get parents to understand that they're the number one line of defense, and that we can gather together as a nation, right, left, it doesn't matter, to protect our kids from these people who want to harm them. I think it's completely bipartisan issue that we should all agree on.